Hello, I'm Maria. My parents abandoned my son at the zoo. And when I refused to pay $2,850 for babysitting, they turned on me like I was the villain. But this isn't just about money. It's about betrayal, manipulation, and a family that's willing to destroy me for their own gain. Ever felt like your own blood was out to get you? Well, you're about to see how far they'll go to control everything. And why I'm done being their puppet. I had planned everything. A simple family outing, a trip to the zoo with my son Eli, and my parents, just like when I was a kid. The zoo was supposed to be a place of joy, laughter, and memories. But as the day unfolded, I realized it would be anything but. The sun was bright that morning, and the air was warm, carrying the faint scent of popcorn and fresh-cut grass. Eli, with his wide eyes and excited chatter, could barely contain himself as we made our way through the entrance. I glanced at my parents, John and Catherine, as they trailed behind us. My mom, always the one to wear that tight smile, gave me a knowing look as if she had everything under control. My dad, gruff as ever, muttered something about the heat, but we all knew he'd enjoy himself once we were inside. We hadn't been there long, just enough time to see the giraffes, the elephants, and the lions, before I noticed something was off. Eli had been holding my hand one moment, then suddenly he wasn't. I turned around, but he was nowhere in sight. Panic hit me like a slap to the face. My heart pounded in my chest, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I rushed through the zoo, frantically calling out his name. Eli, Eli, where are you? My parents were nowhere to be seen. I tried calling my mom, but she didn't pick up. The knot in my stomach tightened. I could feel the sweat forming on my back as I kept searching, my mind racing. Finally, after what felt like hours, I found him, sitting on a bench by the animal exhibit, his face pale and tear-streaked. I rushed over, kneeling in front of him, my voice shaking. Eli, what happened? Why didn't you stay with me? I thought Grandma and Grandpa were going to take me to see the monkeys, he sniffled. I looked around, but still no sign of my parents. Anger bubbled up inside me. I hugged Eli tightly, telling him everything would be okay, but the truth was, I had no idea what was going on. After a few more minutes of searching, I finally spotted them, sitting on a nearby bench, as if nothing was wrong. I stormed over to them, confusion and fear turning into frustration. Mom, Dad, where were you? Why did you leave him? I demanded, my voice rising. My mom looked up, the same tight smile on her face. We had to leave. Something came up, she said, brushing it off as if it were no big deal. Something came up? I repeated, the disbelief creeping into my voice. You left Eli here, alone. How could you do that? My dad shifted uncomfortably, but it was my mom who spoke next. We forgot, she said dismissively, like it was a minor oversight. Then, as if it were just another ordinary conversation, she added, you owe us $2,850 for the babysitting. I froze. What? $2,850? I could barely process what she was saying. Are you serious? You left my son alone, and now you're asking for money? They both looked at me with blank expressions, as if expecting me to just accept this as normal. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, my hands trembling. Mom, Dad, this is outrageous. You're asking me for money after abandoning Eli? I tried to keep my voice steady, but it was hard to hide the raw fury bubbling inside me. Well, we did look after him, my dad said in a tone that made my stomach turn. We didn't have to, but we did. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The years of sacrifice, of giving everything for them, and this was what I got in return: manipulation, guilt, and a ridiculous demand for money. You're not getting a penny from me, I snapped, my voice thick with anger. You can't just manipulate me like this. But as soon as the words left my mouth, they both shot me a look, a cold, calculating look, that made my stomach twist. My mother stood up, her eyes narrowing. If you don't pay us, then don't bother coming back. We've always been there for you, Maria, but it's clear you've forgotten what family means. I was left speechless, staring at the two people who had always been there for me, until this moment. But I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I couldn't. I turned to Eli, taking his hand and leading him away from the zoo, my mind spinning. As I walked, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I couldn't let this go on. It was time to make a change. It was time to stand up for myself and my son. And in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. This would be the beginning of the end of the way my family controlled me. The house felt colder than usual that morning. The events of yesterday still hung heavily in the air, like a thick fog that wouldn't lift. I had barely slept, tossing and turning, my mind replaying the moment my parents had walked away from me, leaving me with nothing but their cold demand for money. My stomach churned at the thought of it. Eli was sitting on the couch, watching cartoons, completely unaware of the storm brewing in the background. I envied his innocence. His only concern was whether we would go to the park later, if we'd have lunch with his friends, if the sun would come out again. Meanwhile, I was trapped in a nightmare, caught between trying to protect him and doing what was right for myself. Tom walked into the kitchen, his eyes tired, his face drawn. He hadn't slept much either, I could tell. "Morning," he muttered, though it didn't sound much like a greeting. His voice had a sharp edge to it. "Morning," I replied quietly, avoiding his gaze as I stirred my coffee. I could feel the tension in the room, thick as molasses, and I wasn't sure how to break it. He didn't understand. How could he? Tom stood still, looking at me with concern, but it quickly morphed into frustration. "Maria, we need to talk," he said, his words carrying the weight of something he'd been holding back for hours. I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I know, but I don't know what to say. What do you want me to do? You're not seriously thinking about paying them, are you?" His tone was harsh, too sharp for comfort. He was upset, but it was hard to tell if it was anger directed at my parents or at me. "I don't know yet," I replied, avoiding his eyes. I couldn't look at him right now. I need some time to think." "No, Maria. You need to stop thinking and start acting," he insisted, his voice rising a bit. "You can't just keep letting them manipulate you. This isn't about Eli anymore. This is about them getting away with it. They know you'll cave in." "I'm not caving in," I said, feeling a surge of anger. "You don't get it. You don't know what it's like to be tied to them your whole life. They're my parents. They know exactly how to get to me." Tom stepped closer, his expression softening. "I get it, Maria. I do. But you're my wife, and I can't stand seeing you let them walk all over you. You have to stand up for yourself. For us." I felt a pang in my chest. He didn't understand. He never would. The years of sacrifice, the weight of the expectations, the way they always found a way to make me feel guilty for standing up for myself, it wasn't something he could just fix with a few words. "I'm not asking for your help, Tom. I'm trying to figure this out on my own," I said quietly, the frustration building inside of me. Tom let out a long, frustrated breath and stepped back. "Fine," he muttered, running his hands through his hair. "But you can't do this alone, Maria. You can't keep carrying everything on your own. Not like this." I watched as he walked out of the room, his shoulders slumped. I wasn't sure if it was the weight of the situation or the strain it was putting on our marriage that hurt more. But the doubt crept in, gnawing at me. Was I making a mistake? Was I just too stubborn, too proud to see the solution? Or was I just too terrified to face the consequences of standing up to my parents? The silence in the house was deafening, and I could feel it closing in around me. I took a deep breath and tried to focus. I couldn't let this destroy everything. Not my son, not my marriage, and definitely not myself. A few hours later, I found myself standing in the living room, staring at the letter my parents had sent. The envelope was thick, official-looking, and I had a sinking feeling in my gut as I opened it. The words inside were as cold and calculated as I'd expected. "Dear Maria, we regret to inform you that unless you comply with our request for the babysitting fee of $2,850, we will be forced to cut you out of our will. It is clear that your selfishness has overshadowed the years of sacrifice we've made for you. You need to pay for your mistakes." I felt a knot form in my stomach. They had crossed a line I hadn't thought possible. I had always known they were controlling, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. The weight of their words hit me harder than I expected. They were willing to use money, something that was supposed to represent love, support, and security, as a weapon to control me. It wasn't just the money. It was the fact that they were willing to destroy everything I had, all for a small amount of leverage. I put the letter down, my hands trembling. This was it. I had two choices: give in, and keep the peace, or stand up to them and risk losing everything. But I couldn't let them win. Not this time. I sat down on the couch, my mind racing. The fear of financial ruin, the thought of losing everything, gnawed at me. But what kind of life would I be living if I let them walk all over me? The doorbell rang, and I snapped out of my thoughts. I wasn't ready for more confrontation. I opened the door, and there stood Lisa, my older sister. She was holding a cup of coffee, her expression unreadable. "Can we talk?" she asked, stepping inside without waiting for an answer. "Not now, Lisa. I'm not in the mood for this," I said, my voice hard. But she wouldn't let it go. "You've seen the letter, haven't you?" I don't know what to say. "I'm sorry." "Sorry?" I repeated bitterly. "Sorry for what? For letting them treat me like this? For letting them tear me apart and still not being there when I needed you the most?" She winced but didn't back down. "Maria, you know how they are. You know they won't stop until they get what they want. But I think you're overreacting. It's not the end of the world. I'm sure there's a way to fix this." "I don't want to fix this," I said, slamming the phone down. "I'm done. I don't need any of you." I felt the last shred of support slip away as I watched her walk out of the door. The one person I thought would stand by me had turned her back just like everyone else. But in that moment, something inside me hardened. I couldn't let this go on. I had to stand up for myself, for Eli, and for the life I deserved. And I was ready to make them regret it. 2 days had passed since I walked away from that soul-crushing conversation with my parents. The heaviness of the ultimatum they had given me still weighed on my chest. I didn't sleep much that night, or the next. My mind constantly churned, racing with thoughts, scenarios, and what-ifs. But one thing was clear, I couldn't keep running from this. I couldn't let them manipulate me anymore. The house was quiet, and I hated it. Eli was in his room playing, probably unaware of the storm that was brewing outside his little world. Tom was downstairs, his face etched with concern. He had been walking on eggshells around me since the zoo incident, unsure of how to help, yet trying his best. He just didn't understand. How could he? As I sat at the kitchen table, my mind racing again, the phone rang, breaking my train of thought. I picked it up without looking at the caller ID, already knowing who it was. "Maria," my mother's voice crackled through the line, sharp and cold as ever. "You need to come to see us. Now. We can't keep going like this." I braced myself. "I'm not doing this anymore, Mom," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not paying you $2,850 for babysitting. And I'm not going to be threatened anymore. You can't control me with money." "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "If you don't come, we'll cut you out of the family completely. No inheritance. Nothing. You'll have nothing left." The ultimatum hit me like a slap in the face, but there was no more hesitation, no more fear. It was time for me to stand up for myself. "I'm not scared of your threats anymore, Mom," I said, barely holding back the anger. "You can't use that against me. I'm done being your pawn. I'll come, but I won't back down. You can't control me with fear or money anymore." I slammed the phone down, my heart racing. Tom, who had been standing in the doorway, watching me silently, finally spoke. "Are you sure about this, Maria? It's going to be hard. You know how they are." "I'm sure," I said, turning to face him. My mind was clear now. I was done letting them dictate my life. I wasn't going to live in fear anymore. I wouldn't back down. For Eli's sake. For my own. Tom stepped forward, his hands gently resting on my shoulders. "Then I'm with you," he said softly. "I don't understand it all, but I know this isn't you anymore. You're stronger than they think." His words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I needed his support, how much I had craved his reassurance. I hadn't seen it before, but now I did. His quiet act of solidarity was all I needed. He believed in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself. I squeezed his hand, feeling the strength flow through me. "Thank you," I whispered. "This isn't just about the money. It's about me finally standing up for myself. No more walking on eggshells, no more hiding." With Tom's quiet support, I picked up my phone again. The number was already dialed. I didn't wait for the ringing to stop before I spoke. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling with anger but also resolve. "I'm coming. But this time, it's on my terms. I'm done letting you control me." I hung up the phone, my chest tight with anticipation. I had no idea what would happen when I saw them again, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them get away with it anymore. Later that day, I found myself sitting at a cafe, my palms sweating as I waited for my parents. The atmosphere was tense, the silence deafening. I could already feel the weight of their expectations, their manipulation, hovering over me. When they walked in, my mother's expression was cold, and my father's face was hardened. There was no warmth, no greeting, just an air of superiority that made my blood boil. "Maria," my father said, his tone clipped. "You've made your point, but now you're being unreasonable." "I'm not being unreasonable," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm standing up for what's right. I'm not paying you that money. And I'm not letting you control me anymore." "You've always been ungrateful," my mother snapped, her voice sharp with disdain. "You don't appreciate everything we've done for you. We raised you. We gave you everything." "No, you didn't," I shot back, the anger surging through me. "You didn't give me everything. You gave me just enough to make me feel guilty for wanting more, for wanting to be my own person." My father leaned forward, his face tightening. "You think you're going to walk away from this? You think you can talk to us like that and get away with it?" "I'm done being your puppet," I said, the words pouring out before I could stop them. "You've manipulated me my whole life, and I'm not doing it anymore. I'm done letting you control me with guilt, with money, with your twisted love. I'm taking control of my life, whether you like it or not." The silence that followed was deafening. My parents were stunned into silence, their faces frozen with disbelief. I had never spoken to them like that before. I had never dared. But in that moment, I realized something. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their control. I stood up, my body trembling but strong. "I won't let you do this to me anymore," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "And I won't let you do this to my son." I turned and walked away, my heart pounding in my chest. For the first time in years, I felt free. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to be controlled anymore. It had been 3 days since I confronted my parents, but it felt like a lifetime. The silence was deafening. I hadn't heard a word from them since that explosive meeting at the cafe, and I knew that something was coming. It was only a matter of time before they retaliated. I sat at the kitchen table, trying to steady my breath, but the tension in the air was suffocating. Tom was downstairs, taking care of Eli, and I could hear their laughter through the floorboards. A part of me wanted to feel comforted by that sound, but another part of me was consumed by an overwhelming sense of dread. Tom had tried to reassure me, telling me everything would be fine, but I could see the anxiety in his eyes every time he glanced at me. It was like he was holding his breath, waiting for the storm to hit. And I was too. I couldn't help it. I knew my parents well enough to understand that they wouldn't just let this slide. The phone rang, and I almost jumped out of my seat. I didn't need to check the caller ID. I already knew who it was. I hesitated for just a second before answering. "Maria," my mother's voice came through the receiver, calm and collected, but I could hear the undertones of something darker. "We need to talk." I could feel my heart rate spike. "What is it, Mom?" "I'm coming over. We'll discuss everything then. It's time to clear things up." I clenched my fists. "I'm not backing down," I said, my voice steady despite the tension swirling in my chest. "I'm not paying you, and I'm not apologizing." "I think you'll want to reconsider," she said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. "We'll be over soon." The line went dead, and I sat there, the weight of her words sinking in. I was furious. How dare they try to manipulate me like this? But there was nothing I could do now but wait. The storm was coming. I stood up, pacing the kitchen as I tried to gather my thoughts. I couldn't let them control me anymore. I had made it clear to them that I wasn't afraid. But fear had a way of creeping in when you least expected it, and I could feel it gnawing at me now. Tom came up behind me, placing a hand on my shoulder. His touch was gentle, but I could feel the unease radiating off him. "You okay?" he asked softly. "No," I replied, my voice cracking. "I'm not okay. This is too much. They're not going to let this go. And I can't let them win." Tom didn't say anything at first. He just pulled me into a hug, letting me breathe in the comfort of his arms. For a moment, I allowed myself to relax, to feel the safety of his presence. But reality set in quickly. The weight of what was coming couldn't be ignored. "We'll get through this," he said, his voice steady. "But you need to be careful. This isn't just about the money anymore. It's about them controlling you. I know, I whispered. But I have to stand up to them. I can't keep living like this. Before Tom could respond, the doorbell rang. Here we go, I muttered, walking to the door. When I opened it, there stood my mother, her face as cold and distant as ever. She didn't greet me. She didn't need to. The message was clear. Without a word, she pushed a legal document into my hands. I looked at it for a moment, not fully understanding what I was seeing. You're being sued, she said, her voice smooth. You've defamed us, and we're taking legal action. You're going to have to apologize, or we'll see you in court. The words didn't register at first. I stared at the document, my hands shaking. I felt like I was going to be sick. Defamation? I finally choked out. Are you serious? Completely, she replied, her voice icy. You've brought shame on this family. If you don't retract your statements and apologize, we'll take this all the way. I felt my anger surge. You're going to sue me over this? Over a babysitting fee? Catherine didn't flinch. It's not about the babysitting, Maria. It's about respect. You've crossed a line. Now you'll pay the price. The door slammed behind her as she left, and I stood there, stunned. The weight of the situation hit me all at once, like a punch to the gut. Legal action? Lawsuits? My parents had truly gone off the deep end. I stood there for a long moment, trying to process what had just happened. My hands were still trembling as I reached for my phone. I needed to talk to Tom, needed to figure out what to do next. When I found him downstairs, I didn't say anything at first. I just handed him the document, and he stared at it, his face draining of color. Jesus, he whispered, his voice low. They're serious. I'm not backing down, I said, my voice shaky but firm. I won't let them win. I won't let them control me anymore. Tom ran a hand through his hair, pacing the living room. Maria, I'm all for you standing up for yourself, but this is huge. You're talking about a legal battle now. They can take everything. Our house, our savings. I know, I said, the reality of it all hitting me. But I can't live like this anymore, Tom. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not. I won't let them break me down. Tom stopped pacing and looked at me, his face filled with concern. But what about Eli? What if this destroys everything? What if we lose? The doubt in his voice hit me like a cold slap. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. We'll be fine, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. I have to do this. For me. For him. Tom nodded, though his worry was still visible. He didn't understand why I couldn't just back down, make peace, but I couldn't let them win. Not now. Not after everything they'd done to me. I'll stand by you, he said quietly, but there was something different in his voice now. A quiet sadness. I knew then that the tension between us was growing. He was afraid for our future, afraid for me. And I couldn't blame him. But there was no turning back now. As the day wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. My phone buzzed with a message, and I looked at the screen. It was from my father. Maria, I know things have gone too far. Let's talk. We can fix this. Come to me. I stared at the message for a long time, my heart racing. Was this some kind of apology, or just another manipulation? I wasn't sure, but I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The following morning, after another sleepless night, I woke up to the harsh reality that the situation with my parents had reached new heights. The tension in the house was palpable. Tom was trying his best to support me, but the strain between us was getting heavier with each passing day. Eli, still too young to understand the complexities of our situation, seemed oblivious to the tension, but I could feel the weight of it every time I looked at him. I hadn't heard from my parents since our last confrontation, but I knew that wouldn't last long. They had too much pride to let this slide, and I could feel their presence looming in the background. The calm before the storm, I thought. Every minute felt like a countdown, and the quiet was unbearable. Tom could sense my anxiety, but he didn't know how to help. His usual comfort had lost its effect. The legal papers, the threat of losing everything, the realization that I was walking a tightrope, these were things he couldn't fix with kind words. No matter how hard he tried to reassure me, I knew the next move from my parents would be calculated and harsh. As I sat in the kitchen, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of me, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the moment I picked it up, I knew what it was about. Maria, the voice on the other end was crisp and formal. It was my mother's lawyer. We are moving forward with the defamation lawsuit. You have 24 hours to respond. My stomach dropped. The walls seemed to close in around me as I held the phone. A defamation lawsuit. Emotional distress. $10,000 on the line. I couldn't breathe. Listen, I said, my voice shaking, I'm not backing down. You can't scare me into silence anymore. The lawyer's tone turned colder. You have been warned. The consequences will be severe. I slammed the phone down, the weight of it all hitting me like a tidal wave. Tom walked into the kitchen, concern etched on his face. What's going on? He asked quietly, noticing the tension in the air. I handed him the phone, and he read the message, his eyes narrowing as he absorbed the news. This is getting serious, he murmured. I nodded, clenching my fists. It's not just serious, Tom. It's their last attempt to break me. They're trying to control me again, and I won't let them. Tom's voice softened, but his words were laced with fear. Maria, I'm with you, but we need to think about the cost. The legal fees, the impact on Eli. I don't want to lose everything. I knew he was worried. He was always the practical one, always considering the consequences before making a decision. But this time, I couldn't think about anything other than standing my ground. I'm not giving in. Not now. Not ever, I said, my voice resolute. Just then, the doorbell rang, and I froze. I didn't need to check who it was. My mother, no doubt, coming to deliver her next blow. She had no intentions of letting me live my life in peace. I opened the door to find her standing there, as calm and composed as ever. But behind her eyes was something else, something cold, something calculating. I thought we could talk, she said, holding up a file in her hand. It's time we settle this before it gets ugly. Without waiting for me to respond, she stepped inside. This is the final straw, Maria. You're forcing our hand, and now you'll have to pay the price. She handed me the file, and I felt the weight of it before I even opened it. The legal document laid out the terms clearly. Defamation, emotional distress, a financial penalty, all for refusing to apologize for what I had said. I stared at the papers, feeling a knot in my stomach. My parents had truly crossed the line. They were willing to destroy me, and everything I had built, just to prove a point. But they weren't going to win. I'm not apologizing, I said, my voice firm. And I'm not going to back down. You've pushed me too far. Her face remained unreadable. You don't understand what this is doing to the family, Maria. You're tearing us apart. I'm tearing us apart? I repeated, incredulous. No, you're the ones who are tearing this apart. You've been manipulating me for years, and I won't stand for it anymore. Her eyes flashed with something, anger? Frustration? This is bigger than you think, she said coldly. We've taken out a second mortgage on the house to fund this case. If you don't help us, we'll lose everything. The bombshell dropped like a stone in the water. My stomach churned. They had taken out a second mortgage. They were so deep into this fight that they were willing to risk their home, just to force me to pay. How could you do this? I asked, my voice shaking with disbelief. You're using the house to manipulate me. This is insane. Her face hardened. It's your choice, Maria. You can help us, or you can watch us lose everything. I felt a cold rush of anger flood through me. This was no longer about a simple disagreement. This was about power. My parents had turned this into a game, and they were willing to sacrifice everything to win. The realization hit me hard. They weren't just my parents anymore, they were enemies, people who saw me as a pawn, nothing more than a means to an end. I stood up, my hands clenched into fists. You've taken this too far, I said, my voice trembling with rage. I'm done being your pawn. I'm done. I turned away from her and stormed out of the room, leaving her standing there, stunned. The weight of what I had just learned settled over me like a dark cloud. I wasn't sure where this would lead, but one thing was clear, I couldn't back down now. Tom was waiting downstairs, looking up at me as I walked in. I could see the concern in his eyes, but I didn't have time for more doubts. We're going to court, I said firmly. Tom nodded, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. He wanted to support me, but I knew he was scared. This was no longer just about us, it was about the whole family, and he feared the damage that was coming. But I had made my choice. The legal battle would continue. And no matter how much it cost, no matter how much they tried to destroy me, I wasn't going to let them win. It had been a few days since the family meeting. I woke up to a quiet house, the kind of silence that felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. The weight of what I'd set into motion still hung over me. Tom had been supportive, but I could tell the stress was taking a toll on him. I could see the worry in his eyes. He hadn't said it outright, but I knew he was concerned about the path I was on. The lawsuit, the legal threats, everything, he was starting to feel the weight too. But I couldn't back down now. Not after everything I had already sacrificed. My parents weren't going to stop. And I wasn't going to let them dictate my life anymore. Tom and I exchanged glances as he passed me a cup of coffee. He didn't say anything, but I knew he was still processing everything that had happened. "How are you feeling today?" he asked quietly, his voice tinged with concern. "I'm fine," I replied, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "I just need to get this over with. I can't keep waiting for them to make their next move." Before Tom could respond, the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat. I knew exactly who it was before I even opened the door. Standing there, calm and collected, was my mother. She was holding a legal folder in her hands, and I could see the familiar coldness in her eyes. I didn't need to invite her in. She just walked past me, taking a seat at the kitchen table like she belonged there. "Maria, we need to talk," she said, her voice like ice. I crossed my arms and stared at her. "What now, Mom? More threats?" She didn't flinch. "If you don't drop this lawsuit and settle with us, I'm afraid you'll be cut out of the family for good." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I could feel my pulse quicken. A part of me wanted to scream, to throw her out of the house, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. This wasn't about me losing my place in the family, it was about me standing up for myself. "Cut out of the family?" I repeated, my voice low. "You've already made it clear where you stand. I'm not backing down, no matter what you do." My mother's expression remained impassive. "Then consider this your final warning. You'll be disowned. Everything you've ever known will be taken from you." The ultimatum hit harder than I expected. For a moment, I felt the sting of the words. The idea that my own mother could disown me, that she could use her power like a weapon, was almost too much to bear. But the spark of defiance in me flared brighter. "You've already taken everything from me," I said, standing tall. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." She stood up slowly, still holding the folder, and gave me one last cold look. "I hope you think carefully about your next move, Maria." With that, she turned and left without another word. I stood there for a long time, the silence in the room suffocating. I could feel the weight of her threat, but I knew it was a bluff. She couldn't break me, not now. I walked over to the table and stared at the folder she had left behind. Inside were papers detailing everything I had already heard, the lawsuit, the threats, the legal penalties. But now it felt different. I wasn't going to cower. I was going to fight back. Later that day, I sat down with a lawyer. The weight of what I was about to do settled on my shoulders, but I didn't hesitate. This was the only way forward. I needed to gather evidence, start building a case. This was no longer about the babysitting fee or the money. It was about control. It was about my life. "I've been documenting everything," I told the lawyer, feeling a sense of relief as I spoke the words. "Emails, phone calls, conversations, everything. I need to know what my options are." The lawyer nodded, flipping through the documents I had prepared. "You've done well so far," he said. "Now, it's time to take the next step. We'll need to gather more evidence, especially regarding their manipulation tactics. But we can definitely move forward with this." For the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't powerless anymore. I had a plan, and I was going to see it through, no matter the cost. As I left the lawyer's office, I felt something shift inside me. There was still so much to do, so many obstacles in my way, but for the first time, I felt like I had a chance. The days that followed were harder than I expected. As I pushed forward with the lawsuit, things started to get darker. My parents retaliated in ways I couldn't have anticipated. They spread rumors about me, whispering to family members and mutual friends that I was ungrateful, mentally unstable, and a bad daughter. The gossip spread like wildfire, and before long, I found myself isolated from the very people I thought I could trust. But the worst part wasn't the rumors. It was the emotional toll it took on me. The weight of their cruelty, their willingness to destroy me just to win, was almost too much to bear. I was fighting back, but at what cost? "Maria, you need to stop this," Tom said one evening, his voice shaking with frustration. "This is tearing us apart." "I can't," I whispered, feeling the tears welling up. "I can't let them win." Tom looked at me, his eyes filled with concern. "But at what cost, Maria? What are you willing to lose?" I didn't answer. I knew what I was risking, everything. But I couldn't back down. I couldn't let them control me any longer. The days blurred together, and as the conflict escalated, so did the strain on my relationship with Tom. The tension between us grew, and it became harder and harder to ignore the cracks forming in our marriage. But then, just when I thought I couldn't take any more, something unexpected happened. My brother David called. It had been years since we'd talked, and I wasn't sure what to expect. "I've been working on this for a while," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "I'm helping you, Maria. I'm on your side." David revealed that he had been quietly gathering information, working on a case against our parents for years. He was willing to help me fight back, to offer legal advice and financial assistance. I felt a surge of relief, a glimmer of hope that I hadn't felt in weeks. Finally, I wasn't alone. David's offer was a lifeline, a chance to take the fight to the next level. I could win this. I could actually win. That night, as I sat with Tom, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We were in this together. The battle ahead was going to be long and difficult, but I knew I couldn't stop now. Not when I had come this far. "I've made my decision," I said, looking Tom in the eye. "We're going to fight. We're going to take this to court." Tom's eyes softened. "I'm with you, Maria. I just want you to know that." "I know," I said, my heart heavy but determined. "This is the only way forward." As I looked at the legal papers in my hands, I realized that the first step was the hardest, but there was no turning back now. The morning of the trial arrived like a storm. The courtroom felt cold, sterile, almost suffocating. I had anticipated this moment for so long, but now that it was finally here, the weight of it all hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about the legal battle, it was about reclaiming everything I'd lost, my dignity, my sense of self, and my right to choose my own path. I stood in front of the mirror that morning, staring at my reflection. The woman looking back at me was different. She wasn't the scared daughter who had been manipulated and controlled for years. No, this woman was determined, battle-hardened, and ready to fight. I had come too far to let fear win. Tom stood in the doorway, watching me as I gathered myself. His eyes were filled with concern, but I could see the flicker of pride there too. He'd stood by me through all of this. He didn't fully understand, but he supported me. I knew he was anxious about the toll this was taking on me, but he knew I had to do this. For me, for Eli, for our future. The trial started in the morning, and as we walked into the courtroom, the tension in the air was thick. On the opposite side, my parents sat with their lawyer, cold and calculating as ever. Catherine's eyes locked on mine, full of judgment. John was as stoic as always, but I could see the anger simmering beneath the surface. They'd never expected me to fight back like this. But here I was. The judge called the proceedings to order, and the weight of what was about to unfold hit me like a freight train. My future, my family, everything was at stake. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was a fight for my identity, for my right to exist on my own terms. The opening statements were made, and I braced myself. The first few hours felt like a blur, the words of my parents' lawyer echoing in my ears. He painted me as an ungrateful daughter, someone who couldn't handle responsibility, someone who'd always been difficult to deal with. His words were venomous, and each one felt like a personal attack. I tried to keep my composure, but my heart pounded in my chest. I couldn't believe this was happening. The people I'd loved for so long, the people I thought I could trust, were now trying to tear me down. The shock was almost too much to bear. As the first witness was called, I gripped the sides of my chair, my knuckles white. My heart raced, and I could feel the tears threatening to spill. But I couldn't let them see my weakness. I had to be strong. The witness, an old family friend, stood up and began to speak. They testified that I was difficult, spoiled, and ungrateful. They painted me as a person who couldn't be trusted. My face went pale as their words sunk in, and I felt the sting of betrayal all over again. How could they do this to me? My parents' lawyer kept pushing, trying to convince the court that I was mentally unstable, that I couldn't handle responsibility, that I wasn't fit to stand up for myself. Each word felt like a knife to my chest. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to fight back. But I kept it together. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. When the judge called for a short recess, I felt the weight of the room press down on me. I stumbled to the corner of the courtroom, my legs weak. My brother David found me there, his face a mask of determination. "Maria," he said quietly, his voice full of urgency. "I've got something you need to see." David handed me a document, and as I read the words on the page, a sense of hope washed over me. The document proved that our parents had forged financial records to manipulate the family's wealth. This was the evidence I needed. I looked up at David, a mix of shock and gratitude on my face. "This is it. This is the proof we need." David nodded. "It's time to turn the tables." I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of power I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't a victim anymore. I had the upper hand. The courtroom grew silent as I stood up to present the new evidence. My heart raced, but I held my head high as I walked to the witness stand. I could feel my parents' eyes boring into me, but I didn't flinch. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. With a steady hand, I placed the forged documents in front of the judge, watching as the room fell into stunned silence. The evidence was undeniable. My parents' scheme was exposed, their manipulation laid bare for all to see. The judge's eyes flicked between my parents and the documents, his face hardening as he ordered an immediate investigation into the authenticity of the records. I could feel the victory bubbling up inside me. The battle had shifted. My parents no longer controlled this narrative. Their lawyer, who had been so confident just hours before, stuttered as he tried to recover from the blow. The judge, his respect for me now evident, turned to me and nodded. "The court will take this into account, Mrs. Last Name." For the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, relief. I had won. The truth was out, and there was no going back. But the trial was far from over. As the day wore on, my parents took the stand. Catherine, with her eyes full of fake tears, tried to manipulate the court with a sob story. She claimed that I had broken the family beyond repair, that my actions had destroyed everything we once had. But this time, her words didn't faze me. I stood up, ready to speak the truth. "I'm not the villain here," I said, my voice clear and strong. "I've spent my entire life being manipulated, being told who I should be, what I should do. I've had enough. It's time to take control of my own life." The courtroom was silent as I continued. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to stand up for the truth. I'm here for my son. I'm here for me." The judge looked at me with a new sense of respect, and I knew that, no matter the outcome, I had already won. I had found my voice. I had taken a stand. The day ended with the judge announcing that a verdict would be delivered the next day. As I sat in the quiet of the courtroom, I felt a sense of finality wash over me. The hardest part was over, but tomorrow would determine everything. Tom was there by my side, his hand on mine. "You did it," he said, his voice full of pride. "I'm so proud of you." I smiled faintly, knowing that whatever happened next, my life would never be the same. The courtroom was eerily quiet, the air thick with anticipation. The trial had gone on for days, and now, we were all here, on the cusp of something that would change everything. I sat in my seat, trying to steady my racing heart. Tom's hand was a steadying weight on mine, and his presence offered me a sliver of comfort. But beneath that, a nervous tension tightened my chest. My parents sat across from us, their faces masks of cold anger, as if they had already accepted defeat. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. This was it, the moment of truth. I tried to breathe through the heaviness of the moment. My mind raced back over everything that had brought me here, the years of manipulation, the betrayals, the courage it took to stand up for myself. It was almost surreal. How had I gone from being the quiet, obedient daughter to someone who had fought her parents in a courtroom? Now, there was no turning back. The judge began reviewing the case, slowly and deliberately. Each word he spoke felt like it carried the weight of my future. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't just about the case anymore. It was about everything: the years I had spent in silence, the mistakes, the pain, the lies. I sat up straight, clutching my hands together tightly in my lap. I couldn't let the nerves overwhelm me now. I had done everything I could to present the truth. I had fought, and I wasn't going to back down. The silence in the room was deafening, stretching for what felt like hours. And then, the judge paused, looking directly at me. My stomach dropped. My mind screamed for him to speak, to end the suspense, but the moment seemed to stretch, pulling me deeper into a pit of uncertainty. Finally, the judge began speaking again. "The court has reviewed the evidence and the testimonies," he said, his voice calm. "The judgment in this case will be as follows." My heart was in my throat, my hands damp with sweat. Whatever came next would shape my future. The judge's words hit like a thunderclap, shaking the room to its core. "Maria wins," he announced, but then added, "with conditions." My breath caught in my throat. I had won, but the terms were not what I had expected. The court ruled that I would have partial custody of Eli, but there would be strict visitation guidelines. Additionally, the court mandated family therapy sessions. I didn't know whether to feel relief or frustration. Yes, I had won, but at what cost? The custody arrangement felt like a compromise, something that would need years to navigate. I wasn't free from my parents, not yet. This wasn't the clean break I had hoped for. But it was a start. I glanced at Tom, his face etched with worry but also pride. My parents, on the other hand, were visibly furious. Catherine's face twisted in rage, while John remained silent, his bitterness evident in the way he gripped his chair. David, though, was watching me with a soft smile, a silent acknowledgement of my strength. The courtroom buzzed with mixed reactions. Some whispered with surprise, others in disbelief. But all I could hear was the quiet pounding of my own heart. Later that evening, Tom and I returned home. The weight of the verdict hung over me, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like the beginning of something much harder. We sat in the living room, talking about the next steps. The custody arrangement was complicated, and I knew there were tough days ahead. The reality of my situation was setting in. I had a long road to travel, but at least I had Eli. At least I had him. "I'm proud of you," Tom said softly, breaking the silence. "But we still have a lot to figure out. You know that, right?" I nodded, feeling the exhaustion crash down on me. The emotional toll had been overwhelming. But I had made it through, and I would keep going. For Eli. For myself. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother, Catherine. "We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow." I stared at the message for a long time. My stomach churned. After everything that had happened, she still wanted to meet? The anger inside me flared, but I knew I couldn't ignore her. Not yet. Not with the battle still unfinished. The next day, I met my parents. The tension in the air was palpable from the moment I walked into the room. Catherine wasted no time in trying to manipulate me. She spoke of how this custody arrangement would tear the family apart, how my actions had caused irreparable damage. "Maria, you're breaking the family," she said, her voice dripping with guilt. "You'll regret this. You're ruining everything." I didn't flinch. Not this time. Not anymore. "No," I replied, my voice steady. "You've been trying to control me for too long. I'm done letting you manipulate me. This is about my son, and my life, not your image." Her face twisted in fury, but I didn't back down. John remained silent, his cold eyes never leaving me. For once, I realized he wasn't the one I needed approval from. Catherine's voice shook with fury. "You'll regret this decision. I promise you, Maria." But I wasn't going to let her guilt me anymore. I stood up, feeling a calm determination wash over me. "I'm not going to regret taking control of my life. I'm not the villain here. I'm done being the victim of your guilt trips." With that, I turned and walked out of the meeting. Days passed, and I began focusing on rebuilding my life. Tom and I started attending family therapy sessions with Eli. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. We talked, we worked through our issues, and slowly, I started to feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something for myself, a future where I wasn't defined by my past or my parents' expectations. Then, just as I was starting to find peace, my lawyer called. The final custody arrangements would be confirmed soon. I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in a long while. I looked out the window, watching Eli play in the yard, and for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Hope for the future. For myself. This was only the beginning. The sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow on the kitchen as I sat at the table, sipping my coffee. The morning was peaceful, almost surreal. It had been days since the final court hearing, and though the tension had lifted, I couldn't shake the feeling that the calm was just the beginning of something new. The relief I'd felt when the verdict was read was still fresh, but now, as I sat here with Tom, the weight of what was to come settled in. I could finally breathe again, but I knew the journey wasn't over. Tom was sitting across from me, his eyes tired but content. We'd been through a lot, and while the past few weeks had been a whirlwind, we had made it through together. He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. "You fought for us. For Eli. For our future. You're stronger than I've ever known." I squeezed his hand, feeling the quiet strength in his words. This wasn't just a win in court, it was the beginning of a new life. A life where I could finally live for myself and the family I had built. But the phone ringing interrupted the moment. My mother, Catherine. I hesitated before answering, unsure of what to expect. The last time we spoke, it had been a bitter exchange. But this time, her voice was different, tentative, almost pleading. "I want to meet," she said, her tone softer than I remembered. "After everything, I just think we need to have a final conversation." I didn't trust her. After all the games, all the manipulation, I knew what this was. Another attempt to get me to back down. But I also knew I had to face it. It was time to set clear boundaries. To finally put an end to this cycle. "I'll meet you," I said, my voice steady. "But this time, it's on my terms." I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of anxiety and resolve. This was it, the final confrontation. The meeting was arranged for later that afternoon. Tom offered to come with me, but I insisted on going alone. I needed to face this on my own. I needed to prove to myself that I could handle it, that I was no longer the same person I had been when I walked into that courtroom months ago. When I arrived at the restaurant, Catherine and John were already seated at a table in the back. My heart tightened as I walked toward them. Catherine's eyes softened when she saw me, but I could tell it was an act. She was trying to manipulate me again, to pull me back into the web of guilt and control. "I'm glad you came," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "You know, Maria, I think we can still fix this. The family, it's falling apart, and we need you." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I took a seat and met her eyes, unflinching. This time, I wasn't going to let her words affect me. "You can't guilt me into this anymore," I said, my voice clear and firm. "I'm done being the daughter you think you can control. I'm done living under your thumb. This is my life now. My decisions. My family." Catherine's face twisted in anger. "You're making a mistake, Maria. The family will never be the same again. Don't you care about us?" Her words were meant to wound, but they didn't. Not anymore. I had fought too hard to let her manipulate me again. "I'm not here to fix you," I said. "I'm here to fix my life. For Eli. For Tom. For me. I'm not the villain here. You are. And I won't let you ruin me any longer." John, who had been silent through most of this, finally spoke. "You think you've won, don't you?" His voice was cold, bitter. "You think you've got it all figured out." "I know what I need," I said, standing up. "And I know what I don't need. I don't need your approval. I don't need your guilt. I don't need you." I walked out of the restaurant, my heart pounding but my head held high. I felt lighter, freer than I had in years. Later that evening, I sat on the couch, reading a message from David. It was short, but it hit me hard. "You're doing the right thing, Maria. I'm proud of you. You're finally taking control." I smiled as I read his words. It felt like a weight lifting off my chest. David had been my ally through this entire battle, and now, knowing he supported my decision made everything feel that much clearer. The next morning, Tom and I attended our first family therapy session. I wasn't sure what to expect, but as the session began, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The therapist was kind, understanding, but firm. He encouraged us to focus on healing, to not get lost in the past. As we spoke about our struggles, our hopes for the future, I realized how much progress we'd already made. We were still in the early stages, but I could see a path forward. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something solid, something real. But deep down, I still felt the scars of my past. The emotional abuse, the manipulation. It wasn't something I could forget, but it was something I was learning to live with. "I'm here, and I'm ready to heal," I whispered to myself as the session came to an end. A few weeks later, Tom and I decided to take a weekend getaway. We spent the time talking, walking through parks, reconnecting. For the first time in a long while, we felt like we were on the same team again. No more secrets. No more lies. Just the two of us, building a future. As we walked hand in hand, I reflected on how far we'd come. My true family was right in front of me, Tom and Eli. We were a unit now, stronger than ever. On the drive back, I received a text from my lawyer. The final custody order had been confirmed. I was the primary guardian. It was official. Eli was staying with me. That evening, I sat down with Eli for the first time since the trial. We talked about the changes, about what the future would look like. He was still processing everything, but as I held his hands and reassured him that he was safe, that everything was going to be okay, I saw the fear begin to fade from his eyes. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. I watched him play in the yard, his laughter filling the air. This was the future I had fought for. A peaceful, loving home. A future where my son could grow up without fear, without manipulation. A future I had carved for myself, for us. As the day ended, I stood by the window, watching the sunset. It was a symbol of everything I had overcome. The past would always be with me, but now, those scars weren't signs of weakness. They were proof of my strength. I had fought for my life, my family, and now, I could finally embrace the future. This was my beginning.